Hi, and welcome to Behind the Seams, a monthly video series where our staff shares sewing tips, easy how-tos, and more. I'm your host, Lindsay Mayland. We have a great show ahead of us today covering a wide variety of topics, so we hope you enjoy it. So today we're going to be answering a question from Donna Ricker of Louisville, Kentucky. And she asks, as I work on different projects, I toss my scraps into a big bin. When I finally need them, I am overwhelmed and I don't know where to start. How do I organize my scraps so that I can actually use them? So for something so small, scraps can be a big problem, especially if you don't have a method to organize them. So I'm going to have everyone take a little quiz right now to find out their ideal scrap saving philosophy. So it's kind of hard to do a quiz over video, so we'll take it slow and you'll just kind of need to remember a few answers as we move through it. Did you get your answer? Now that you have an idea of how sorting scraps may work best for you, let's talk about them a little more. So if you organize scraps by size, it allows you to choose patterns that use many of the same size pieces over and over again, such as those with triangle squares, flying geese, 4-patch units. So quilters who sort by size, maybe they like to play with contrast, like light and dark fabrics, but aren't overly concerned about the color schemes of their quilts. They tend to like that little sparkle that comes when you're using a variety of fabrics and colors in repeated units. So if you're sorting by size, ask yourself, do you love making quilts that use pre-cuts? If so, you may want to cut your scraps into the largest usable pre-cut size, such as 10 inches, 5 inches, 2.5-inch squares, or 2.5-inch wide strips. What are your favorite blocks to make? So if you find yourself piecing a lot of, let's say, flying geese units, you may want to cut background fabrics, such as whites, creams, into squares, and darker fabrics into rectangles for those flying geese. And then you can ask yourself, do you like strip piecing or string piecing? So in that case, you may want to cut leftover fabrics into strips of different widths, such as 1.5, 2, 2.5, or even 3 inches. If you organize scraps by color, it allows you to choose seasonal or holiday quilts or projects that use color placement to highlight a design. So quilters who organize by color tend to like more limited color palettes. So if you're sorting by color, ask yourself, how do you define a background color? So you may be able to store all of your whites, creams, even light grays and low volume scraps together. But if you like to be more specific with your background colors, that may not be the best option. How detailed do you want to get? So for example, how do you define blue? Is it dark and light blues? Does it include teals and aquas? Do you want to separate by shades? So these are some things to think about. And lastly, what colors do you use most in your quilts? So you can store the scraps of colors you use the most often in your larger containers, and then save your smaller containers for those colors that you use less of. And not everyone makes quilts suited for scraps. So if you prefer to make quilts with larger blocks or a very specific planned color palette, you might not be able to incorporate those small bits of fabric. In that case, you may want to collect your scraps in one container and possibly donate them to a local organization in need. Now I wanted to give everyone a little look at my own scrap storage. It is nothing fancy at all, but I think it's always fun to kind of see how other people's fabric collections look. So I personally sort my fabric scraps by size and then color. So I used to only save scraps that were 2.5 inches square. So I cut everything into those measurements and then I organized them by color. So I just store them in this Ziploc bag, nothing crazy, but I chose this size because there are tons of patterns out there that use mini charm squares. So this size works great for English paper piecing too, and it was just a really simple way to store my scraps. They didn't take up much room this way. So over the years, I have made many scrap quilts with these 2.5 inch squares. So I decided to start saving strips instead. So you'll see I have strips sorted by color in this box I have, and then this little tin. And I cut my strips anywhere between 1 inch wide to 2.5 inch wide, depending on what size I'm left with. And I plan to use them to make some string pieced quilts, maybe some log cabin quilts, and definitely a pineapple block quilt. And in an effort to use up all of my 2.5 inch square scraps, I am joining the American Patchwork and Quilting Quilt-Along that just started this week. So it is the Scrap Happy pattern by Krista Watson, and the quilt only uses 2.5 inch squares of fabric. So I have been piecing a few blocks, which you can see here. So I'm very excited to use all my squares in this project. So if you're interested, we'll link to the Quilt-Along in our video description so you can join the fun. Thanks for your question, Donna. We hope these tips helped you start your scrap saving process. Now I'm handing things over to Allison, who's sharing some products she loves.
This first product is the magnetic pincushion with bobbin ring from Prim Love. It is an awesome product because it's kind of like 2-in-1. So you have this magnetic pincushion inset into the bobbin holder. There's this nice groove so it's easy to pick up pins. You can also remove this. There's some nice storage underneath. And you have this place to store all your bobbins. So you can take it with you, use them together or separately. This next product is floss bobbins from the Gypsy Quilter. This is for storing embroidery floss. You can actually store 2 skeins per unit. So you can see here they wrap around this middle, and then you can push this back down and so your threads don't come unraveled. And they're also stackable, so you can stack as many as you want. And if you want to take them on the go, you can just snap them together and take the whole unit. This product is the Fine Line glue tips from Pen and Paper Patterns. It's an attachment that fits on Elmer's glue, and it has this nice little lid with this metal prong, so it makes sure your nozzle doesn't get clogged. And it's great for holding fabric in place for sewing curves or applique, things that you want to make sure are held together before you stitch and things you don't want to use pins for. This is a great wool pressing mat called the Wool Press and Lock Tiles from Sewing with Sarah. They're great because they're wool mat, but they come in these pieces that interlock together. So you can build them to the size you need, or just take them on the go and reassemble as needed. This is the Clamp Light from Caterpillar. It is a great way to hold onto your ruler without hurting your wrists. So it suctions down to your ruler, and it'll work with any size ruler. So you can see it's a good strong suction. And another great thing about it is it has a light, a couple different settings, and it's rechargeable. So it's very handy for cutting precisely.
Thanks, Allison. I'm now here with Doris, and she's going to share some details about our October 2022 issue of American Patchwork and Quilting.
That's right. Our October issue came out a few weeks ago, and it's full of gorgeous fall and Halloween projects. It's also our Meet the Makers issue, so we feature 5 quilters you'll love getting to know better.
So there are a lot of great projects in this issue, so let's take a look. And in case you need even more autumn inspiration, our fall issue of Quilts and More came out earlier this month too.
Quilts and More has several easier quilts and smaller decor items, so if you're not up to making a complicated quilt this season, this magazine has many fun options to choose from. Let's share those projects.
Fall is my favorite season to sew for, so I just love seeing all these projects in the magazines. So I know you like Halloween,
Yes,
Doris.
I do.
Are there any projects on your to-make list?
I do love Halloween and fall. I have a big collection of Halloween fabrics in my stash, and I think I may be starting a quilt using my Halloween stash to make Melissa Corey's Nature Walk design from Quilts and More.
I love it. And I think I'm going to make the spooktacular ghost wall quilt from American Patchwork and Quilting, and then the sign of the season fall pillow from Quilts and More. So you can find both of these magazines on newsstands now, or you can buy a copy at our online shop, apqshop.com. And now we're handing things over to Beth, who's going to show us how to make a great back-to-school project.
Hi, I'm Beth with American Patchwork and Quilting, and today I'm going to show you how to make a sandwich wrap that can replace disposable baggies. Find the link to the free pattern in the video description. First, you'll need a 13-inch square of fabric. I'm using this adorable red gingham from the Sweet Picnic collection by Natalia Juan Abello for Riley Blake Designs. I've got my square of fabric here and I've already marked. So what you want to do is mark from each corner a dot 2 inches in from each side. So do that on all corners. And then from each edge, you're going to measure over 1 inch and draw a line. So you end up having a big square and 4 dots. So the first thing you want to do is fold each corner into the dot and press. And do that on all 4 corners. Then you'll unfold each corner and trim to 1/4 inch away from the crease. Fold it back up, and then each side you're going to take the raw edge and fold it to the line and press. So fold over again, and then at the corner, when you fold it, this is going to come together to create a nice mitered corner. So if you need to manipulate it a little bit to get that to come together really nicely, you can do that and then press. And then I'm just going to put a little clip in the corner just to hold that corner nicely while I press all the rest of the way around. Next, we're going to add our lining fabric. For this, we're using PUL, which is polyurethane laminate, and it's a waterproof surface. So I have a 10 3/4 inch square here. You just need to undo the clips, and then we're going to place this under the hem that you just created. So it kind of goes all the way to the fold. And I've made a few of these, and I will say every once in a while, maybe I got my hem just a little bit too big, and it doesn't quite fit. So you can just trim that off a little bit until it sits flat. And then refold and reclip, and then we'll stitch this down. Now I'm going to stitch 1/8 of an inch away from this folded edge all the way around my sandwich wrap. When you get to the corner, if you can stop right at that miter, then you can pivot. I've got my stitching done, and the final step is to add some hook and loop tape so that it will hold it closed when you wrap it around your sandwich. So this is going to go in 2 opposite corners, so pick which corners you would like your fastener to be on. And then I've got my hook side, which is cut to 1.5 inches, and that's going to go on the lining side of the wrap about 1/2 inch away from the corner. And then on the opposite corner, you're going to flip that over, and then the loop side, which is still 3.5 inches, is going to be sewn to the fabric side of our wrap, about 1/2 inch away from the corner. I like to use my zipper foot for sewing on hook and loop tape because I can get a nice clear view of the edge. The hook and loop tape is sewn on, and now the wrap is complete. So I'll show you how this works. So I've got my little wooden sandwich here, and you just put it in the center of your wrap, fold in the sides, and then you can fold up the bottom and then secure. So the reason that the loop side is a little bit longer is that so this adjusts to the thickness of your sandwich. What I love about this project is it works as an eating surface too. So you can add, you know, some little wooden apple slices and use that as a surface. It's great for picnic tables or other places where the surface maybe wouldn't be so clean. Great for kids, that way they can keep all their mess contained in one spot. You could add some matching cloth napkins and you'll have the cutest lunch ever.
And that's it for today's show. Thanks to everyone who watched. We really hope you enjoyed it, and we know we talked through a lot of things today, so in the video description you can find a link where we'll list all of the patterns, the products, all the resources, and more. So make sure you check that out. We'll see you next month.